Hey everybody, Vestmore here, and today we're looking at Baldur's Gate 3 once again. It's an awesome game. However, while the absolute cornucopia of choices you have available to you can be a ton of fun to explore, I know a lot of players out there are going to be probably feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So today I figured I would essentially set you right, set you on the correct course when it comes to creating your character, and just essentially letting you know which race you should be picking depending on your class. If you enjoy this, do leave a like and let me know down in the comments which class you went for. So, as you all know, Baldur's Gate is currently in early access, and right now, while we're going to be getting more, there are only 6 classes available. These include the Cleric, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue, Warlock, and the Wizard. Now I should say, just to preface this entire thing, that you can use whatever race you want. It's not a big deal, you don't have to min-max, you will do just fine. However, if you do want to have as effective a character as possible, then be sure to take heed of these tips. When it comes to building a Cleric, the 2 stats or attributes that you're going to want to be focusing on are Wisdom and either Strength or Dexterity. Wisdom, why? Because Wisdom is what Clerics use to cast their spells. It's what makes your spells more potent, ups those saving throw DCs and all that good stuff. So when creating a Cleric, I would recommend the following races. Gold Dwarf is a really good choice because it gives you a bonus to your Wisdom and Constitution, giving you more hit points, which allows you to hold the front line for your allies. Gold Dwarf also comes with a Warhammer proficiency, which allows you to use Warhammers, which are a direct upgrade to something like a mace. This of course makes you much more effective in melee combat should you choose to go there. And as a result, I'd recommend focusing on Strength over Dexterity if you do decide to go this route. Assuming you do want to go a Dexterity based Cleric, however, I would recommend Wood Elf as your next best choice. The bonus to Wisdom is of course a no-brainer, and the extras to Dex are really nice as that will increase your AC, as well as boosting your initiative, which allows you to have an earlier turn in combat. Wood Elf also gives you access to short swords, which are one-handed finesse weapons, meaning you can use your dexterity when attacking with them, and of course because they're one-handed, it means you can use them alongside a shield. Moving on from there, we have Fighters. Now, of course, Fighters are your martial prowess class. They are masters of combat and are thus proficient with every weapon and armor type in the game. There are a ton of ways to build Fighters, however, the main 2 ways are usually either straight up strength melee or dexterity based ranged. If you're making a melee build, then strength is your friend, and because of this, I would recommend taking Shield Dwarf. You get an insane +2 to con and strength, which is great. That's the 2 attributes you really want, making Shield Dwarf a very, very good option for a strength-based fighter. On the flip side, if you're going Dex, then any of the full-blooded elves will work. My personal favorite is Wood Elf, however, as this also gives you access to extra movement and proficiency in stealth, meaning you can set up in the shadows with a longbow and get advantage on your attacks. Now, I do need to make a special mention here, as depending on which subclass you're going to be taking for Fighter, you may want to choose a different race. One of the 2 subclasses you can pick for Fighter at the moment is the Eldritch Knight, which of course uses intellect-based casting, much like a wizard. So assuming you want to go this route, I would recommend either High Elf for the extra cantrip and Dex if you're going for a Dex-based Eldritch Knight, or if going for a strength-based one, I would recommend Githyanki, as they get a +2 to strength and a +1 to intellect, as well as some pretty cool psionics to boot. Moving on from there, we have Ranger. Now, Rangers are all about being outdoorsmen capable of surviving on their own. I will admit that Ranger seems to have had a bit of a rework in Baldur's Gate 3 compared to 5e, and it seems there's a multitude of ways you can build them. However, they are still that halfway house between a druid and a fighter. And as such, the traditional dexterity and wisdom build is still pretty good. And of course for this, I would recommend a Wood Elf, as they get that +2 to Dex and that +1 to Wisdom. Much like Fighter, if you want to go for a more strength-based build, perhaps you want to take the Ranger Knight favored enemy, which allows you to use heavy armor, then in my opinion, Shield Dwarf reigns supreme. Moving on from there, we have Rogue. Now, of course, rogues are the hard-hitting, stealthy, quick-footed combatants in a battle, and of course, they also fulfill a role of being quite reliable out of battle, being able to take multiple skill proficiencies. For Rogue, you have quite a few different options. Being a mostly dex-based class, I would recommend a Lightfoot Halfling, as you get the +2 to dex. You also get a +1 to charisma, which can be really useful, assuming you want to take those skill proficiencies and get things like persuasion, intimidation, etc. And the lucky ratio means you cannot critically miss. So if you roll a 1 to hit, it will re-roll the dice and you get to use that instead. This is especially important as rogues usually opt for a single hard-hitting attack as opposed to multiple attacks, so ensuring you don't lose that attack to a critical fail is pretty good. However, one of the drawbacks to playing a halfling is that, much like dwarves, their smaller stature means that their movement speed is decreased. If you reckon this is going to be an issue for you, then as an alternative, I would recommend Wood Elf, as they of course get increased speed, they have just as good dex, and their proficiency with longbows ensures you get a little bit of extra damage when going for ranged attacks. As another little extra mention, if you're deciding to go Arcane Trickster as your subclass, I would recommend going for High Elf, as this allows you to get an extra cantrip, as well as making your spells a little bit more potent. Up next is Warlock, which of course are the casters that have locked themselves in a pack with some kind of outer being. As most of what you do is charisma based, Half Elf is a fantastic choice, specifically in this case the High Half Elf. This gives you access to the extra cantrip, as well as a flat +2 to your charisma, good stuff, and +1 to 2 other stats, giving you a lot of room for build flexibility. And finally, we have Wizard. Wizards, much like Warlocks, rely on pretty much just their single casting stat, which in this case is Intellect. Now, unfortunately, there are no races that give you a +2 to Intellect in the game currently. However, you can't go wrong with High Elf. The extra dexterity, of course, helps with AC, initiative. Dexterity is just a really good stat. And of course, they get the extra cantrip and the intellect for spellcasting. If you're tired of elves, however, then Asmodeus/Mephistopheles Tieflings and the Githyanki are both interesting picks. Tieflings, of course, getting useful cantrips and fire resistance, which, when you hit it, will be very, very useful. And the Gith for having medium armor proficiency, which allows you to make a tankier wizard, as well as psionics, which adds some really cool options for you to play about with. Anyway, that's it. That's just a quick overview of the classes and race combinations I would recommend to you guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them down in the comments. And if you're still unsure as to what class to play, then honestly, just play a human. They are jack of all trades, master of none. You cannot go wrong with them. But that's all for now. This is Vest, signing off.
Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget, if you haven't already done so, you can join the HyperX Gaming Discord. We've got an awesome community over there with so many different channels for you to chat loads of different topics and different games. I'm in there, the team's in there. If you guys want to chat with us, find people to play with, it's just in general a great place to be. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of our future uploads.